Hello and welcome to another video. We recently got The Court of the Dead, a Nico D'Angelo adventure, a book that follows Nico D'Angelo and Will Solis and serves as a sequel to The Sun and the Star. As of the time I'm filming this is day 3 of the reading blog and I just finished the book. And I must say, when I first started the book, I might have been a little bit dramatic about my thoughts and opinions on the book. After reading this book, I think this might be the last Rick Riordan book I ever read. I want my Nico back. The first chapter is definitely the weakest of the whole book. At this point, I'm ready to admit that the Percy Jackson musical understands the Percy Jackson characters better than Rick Riordan does in 2025. And I guess I was just feeling very dramatic when I first started reading it. This is a disclaimer. Please don't rush to the comments to roast me as soon as you hear me say something or claim something. The book obviously starts with a dedication, and this time it's for those wishing for a second chance, a new beginning, and opportunity to choose differently. This one's for you. And while I've been loving the last 2 dedications that we've gotten in Rick Riordan books, both the ones for the Chalice of the Gods series and the previous Nico D'Angelo adventure book, I do have to mention that they're exactly what's wrong with Rick Riordan writing nowadays. And as someone who has been in the fandom since 2012, it is blaringly obvious to me.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
I'm just gonna come out and say it. This book dedication honestly makes it sound like the characters are going to be completely out of character. What do you mean new beginnings and opportunities to choose differently? It's giving Rick Riordan trying to retcon his other writing, which is by far way more popular than this, so I don't understand the why. You would think the start of the book would be harmless, right? I've only read 12 pages. What do I have to be mad about? Well, a lot, in fact. What do you mean Nico D'Angelo and the god Dionysus, Mr. D, are having a therapy session down at the beach? Dionysus is famous for not standing the campers. And I understand it's funny to have a dynamic between Nico and Dionysus. I think it provides a chance for a funny back and forth, but this is not it. Since when has Dionysus been this level of understanding? If you answered since The Sun and the Star, you would be correct. After they do some breathing exercises, Dionysus says, and I quote, "Every exercise I show you has a point, I promise." What do you mean? That is the most un-Dionysus piece of dialogue that I have ever read. Except no, there's something way worse, because look at this. You can blame Percy Jackson for that. I'm sorry, I know it's 2025 and it's been a couple of years since you published your last Percy Jackson and the Olympians books, but since when does Dionysus call Percy Jackson Percy Jackson? What do you mean it's not Peter Johnson or Perry Johansson? What do you mean? Unacceptable! The worst part of it all is that we get character assassination. The worst part of character assassination is that it boils down both Will and Nico into their base components, more based on fanon, and that really sucks. As someone who loved Nico in the original series, appreciated Will, and grew to love them even more separately and together throughout Heroes of Olympus and the Trials of Apollo, this is saddening to me because it's clear to me that Rick Riordan has forgotten his own characters and that Mark Oshiro, I'm sorry, simply does not get them. It's true that Nico has gone through a huge character transformation. Even in book 3, he changes a lot from beginning to end. And then throughout books 4 and 5 and the rest of Heroes of Olympus, the boy's put through the ringer, okay? So it's normal for his character to fluctuate because he's been put into different traumatic situations. But here, he is boiled down to terrible one-liners. Since when does Nico say things like, "They couldn't handle me," or "being still is overrated"? Oh right, he also says cringy things like, "Hey, that's my incredibly handsome boyfriend. Back off." I understand that due to past occurrences for Nico, he would have an insecure attachment to Will, but oh my goodness. In what universe would Nico D'Angelo, after having been dating Will for a year and having traveled with him to Tartarus and back, in what universe would he be jealous, even for a split second, of Juniper? And while I understand that it's important for authors to write own voices stories, and Mark Oshiro is gay, therefore it should be more authentic if he writes both Nico and Will, this is not Nico. And Will booping Dionysus on the nose and saying, "You're so cute when you pretend to hate us," is absolute insanity and out of character. And that's where I left it. I am so mad, guys. I think I'm gonna read this book, and I hate that for me. I have been reading these books for over 12 years. And the fact that we are now getting to a well-beloved character, and hating it. It's just making me so sad. We're meeting some new campers now, and the thing is, Nico has never been interested in clothes before, but now that he's written by Mark Oshro, I feel like he's become a gay stereotype. And so has Will. They are literally both just the grumpy sunshine trope. That's it, that's all they're reduced to. And now Nico is critiquing people based on what they're wearing. He's like, ooh, I approve of that outfit, that's punk, that's so cool. I want my Nico back.
I think I might be pregnant.
Oh. 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 No.
It has finally happened. It is currently 2025 and there is officially a son of Hestia. Rick is losing the plot. So we're finally talking to Hazel and Nico is like, yep, that's my ray of light. And Will blushes and says, please stop giving me nicknames. Will is speaking for literally everyone in the fandom right now. Stop it. This isn't you. I might not get through this whole video. I am literally rage baiting myself by reading this book. I didn't know this was gonna happen. It just dawned on me that they're going to go to Camp Jupiter in this book, and Nico is already known in Camp Jupiter because he was there at the beginning of Son of Neptune and everyone knew him there and everyone was scared of him. I'm like, who in the right mind would be scared about this version of him? Because he's just like a dark twink. Will Rick remember his writing? Let's see. Okay, while the cheek kissing is cute and it's giving Percabeth and Hiccup and Astrid, it is very much not giving Nico D'Angelo. While I believe that Nico can be and is a caring and loving boyfriend, I don't think PDA is his thing. And I don't think I'm crazy for thinking that. I really don't. Am I too old to be reading these books, or should Chiron not be saying the word problematic? Hazel asks for both of them to go to Camp Jupiter and help her for a couple days, and Chiron doesn't want them to go because they're the only like older campers there, so they have to stay and help everyone. And when Nico is told no, instead of doing something like Nico would do, he gives Chiron puppy eyes. And then he begs / tries to convince him to say yes. Nico giving someone puppy eyes to get what he wants instead of just going out and doing it himself despite being told no. This is the kid that found the Roman camp and established himself there and told no one about it. This is the kid who's spent years without living at Camp Half-Blood and living by himself, you know, and figuring it out his life. This is the kid that turned the tide at the Battle of Manhattan. This kid is giving Chiron puppy eyes and asking for permission? How did we get here and how do we get out? So it's not all bad. Here is a way to do this correctly without making it cringe. They're talking about Nico's problem that he has been running his whole life and he has trouble staying still, and it's been 3 months and he's worried about not being worried because he's been worried his whole life. So now that he can be chill and finally appreciate life and live his life, he's like, but what is gonna come? You know, what's gonna ruin this? And then he puts his head on Will's shoulder and asks, am I broken, Doc? I think that's cute. Okay, if we kept this vibe for the rest of the book, I would be fine. Doc is a great nickname. What are you talking about, Ray of Sunshine? Doc? Perfect. Ray of Sunshine, straight into Tartarus. So anyway, I'm not a hater. There can be cute things here. I cannot believe this. As soon as I see a shimmer of hope in this book, then like, no. Thanks, Sunshine. This book is as confused about Leo's death as we are. Which begs the question, when in the timeline is this? Book 1 was at the end of September, right before Chalice of the Gods happens. And this is 3 months later. So I'm guessing this is either the end of November or start of December. So that means that Wrath of the Triple Goddess has already happened? Wait, no. Why is this so confusing?
You have to don't. What did he say? You have to don't.
I just had like a huge brain fart. No, this happens a year after Wrath of the Triple Goddess. Because the Percy Jackson adventures happen at the same time as Trials of Apollo. I don't know anymore. I should know where in the timeline this is, but I'm blanking so hard right now. And I do this for a living, so I can't imagine being a normal fan and trying to read this. After that breakdown I had because of the timeline, I think I'm finally back on solid footing. Apparently Percy and Annabeth are in their first semester at New Rome, so obviously this is way after the Trials of Apollo because that ends before they go there, and this is after the Chalice of the Gods and that trilogy because that is them doing senior year. So placing this in a timeline isn't that hard. This is literally the end. Boiling down Will, a medic during the Battle of Manhattan and a 2-times war veteran, someone who's been to Tartarus itself, to someone whose personality is composed of equal equal parts warmth, compassion, and optimism with a sprinkling of humor and tasty baked goods should be illegal. So apparently the reason that Hazel asked for Nico and Will to go to Camp Jupiter is because the Minotaur showed up at her doorstep. Why? Because when Nico and Will rescued Bob from Tartarus, they inspired monsters everywhere to believe that they too could change their fate, and that they could also stop being monsters and just become mythics who lived among mortals and demigods as normal members of society. That's what the Percy Jackson world has been reduced to lately. Both in the later books and in the shows, monsters can't just be monsters anymore. They're never just evil anymore. I just miss the good old days where the Minotaur was just the Minotaur and wanted to kill Percy. There was a funny moment there where he took off his quilt and he was just wearing tighty whities. And everyone was like, dude, put some pants on. I thought that was funny. Nico shielded his eyes. Surely, if the true forms of gods could make mortals spontaneously combust, monster groins could do the same. Rick Riordan, you can be funny, you still got it. After that, Nico takes a nap. Will and Hazel do a tour of Camp Jupiter, and then they meet up for lunch, after which they go to meet the other mythics. There they meet an Impusai, and while Nico internally is like she is so beautiful she could look like a goddess, Will outwardly says, I'd heard about your beauty, but wow. And Nico goes, Will, no bisexual chaos allowed today. And you stop using charm stick on my boyfriend. Someone please count the amount of times that they call each other boyfriends in here, because obviously, yes, I love it, you do you, but enough is enough. I'm not saying use a thesaurus, I'm saying he could have said using charm speak on him. But what in the 2025 is this? Nico saying bisexual chaos? Please take into account two things. Nico was born in like 1930s. And English is not even his native language. He then learned English as like an 11-year-old in the US in the Lotus Casino, where he would have picked up a lot of different slang. I wish that when Nico spoke, it was a mix of slang of the past several decades, because that would make sense. He met a lot of people from a lot of different time periods. But not only should his way of speaking be more old-fashioned, but also, it's currently 2025 in our world now. But when the first Percy Jackson book came out, I think it was either 2006 or 2007, meaning that canonically, if we take into account that it's been at least 4 to 5, 6 years maybe since then, it is at most 2012 or 2013. Who is saying bisexual chaos? I feel like in being written by an openly gay person, Nico has become a gay stereotype. Okay, what in the timeline hell is this? There is no freaking way that Nico D'Angelo has watched Barbie. What do you mean Mythic Dojo Casa House? What am I in? I just reached page 100 of the book, and I'm not gonna say that I prematurely judged it, but I definitely think that the first 12 pages don't stand for the whole book. The thing is that this book is clearly written by two authors. You can tell when Rick is writing, and you can definitely tell when Mark is writing. And I'm sorry for Mark, I'm sure they're a wonderful person, but they're just not Rick Riordan. I'm sure their books work perfectly well on their own, but this is a Rick Riordan book. It should sound and feel like a Rick Riordan book. And while it kind of feels like a Rick Riordan book, it definitely doesn't sound it, and you can definitely tell in the dialogue and in the inner monologue. That is where it's glaringly obvious that it's not Rick writing. That's in terms of writing. In terms of the actual plot, like I said, they met with the Minotaur, and now they've also met the other mystics that are there. Mythics? Yeah, the other mythics that are there. For some reason, they're all going to Camp Jupiter. None of them are trying to get into Camp Half-Blood. Wonder why? But it's looking like they're not only going to be spending 2 days at Camp Jupiter, because there's a lot of tension between the mythics and the demigods. Besides Hazel, who I think is pretty on character so far, she hasn't done anything but be like, Nico, I need your help. You need to see this. We've also seen Frank again, and I've enjoyed seeing him. He's been funny, he's been charming. So far, it doesn't seem like he's glaringly out of character, like some other people. In terms of more cringy lines, we did come across, "Ready, my grumpy bowl of darkness." And in terms of gross mischaracterizations, we have, "Wow, thanks for telling me totally new information. That made Mr. D smile. I do love your sarcasm, Nico." What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean by shaking it? What are you doing? What do you mean?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Mr. D likes a demigod sarcasm. He has known Percy for over 5 years now. It's something he would never say. And then afterwards, because obviously for some reason Mr. D has become Nico's therapist, Nico couldn't control it. He burst into tears. I'm all for bursting into tears, you know? I feel like that works with certain characters where you believe that's how they would process process emotion. I don't feel like Nico's the kind of guy to just burst into tears. Nico, when have I ever asked you to apologize to me for expressing anything? If you had asked me back in 2012 when I first read the Percy Jackson series who I thought spoke these words, never would I ever say it was Mr. D. For a good reason, because that's not a Mr. D line. I'm all for Nico going to therapy, don't get me wrong, I think that's a very nice idea, and I think they're trying to send a very nice message to younger kids about asking for help, accepting your own weaknesses, learning to come into your own and grow up and evolve as a person. I think that's a very nice message. However, I think if they wanted to add or have a therapist character or someone to act as a therapist for Nico, they could have either done Chiron, who fits the bill way more than Mr. D, or get this, created an original character. I know they're fishing for nostalgia bait, but I think an original character would have just worked way better because now they've just massacred Mr. D's character. Mr. D wasn't a nice guy, and that's fine. You can have a non-nice guy be an interesting and good character. Now I feel like everyone here has to talking therapy speech. Nico D'Angelo should not know internet memes! And Will Solis isn't stupid. I'll say it louder for the folks in the back. He isn't stupid! He's just pretty. The question we all want answered, but Rick Riordan is too much of a coward to even attempt it. And let's be honest, even if he did decide on a canonical age for both of them, he would probably either forget or change his mind by the next book. Frank literally just said, "Oh, remember how hard it was for me to control my shape-shifting when I was younger?" Girl, when I was younger? If my grip on the timeline is correct, and I am now convinced that it is, that was literally last summer. And also, I understand that Percy and Annabeth are in New Rome University. They have to deal with that. Can't they just pop in, have dinner with them or lunch with them one day? I feel like after sending them off to Tartarus to fend for themselves, that's the least they can do. Like, to catch up, to chat just for a bit. But no, as you can see, it is currently nighttime, and I have to say I have chilled a bit after my initial frustration with the book. We can call it that, yes, frustration. Oh wow, I've already read 32% of the book. Do not pay attention to anything else on there that does not say anything about me. I will literally download any book. I'm currently halfway through chapter 13, very Taylor Swift coded, and I am on page 115 out of 356. Now, initially my plan was like, what if I just read the whole book in one sitting? Unfortunately, I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's fair to the book. When I read a book in one sitting, there's something about sitting there for 4 to 6 hours straight just consuming a story that I feel like makes me like the story more than if I just prolonged it and dragged it out. Because whenever I read mediocre books in short amount of times, I get the feeling that I've liked them more than mediocre books that I just drag out. So I don't feel like it would be the fair reading experience. I also filmed and edited and posted a YouTube short to keep you guys updated more or less as I go on this journey, because I want you guys to also know what's happening, and I really care about what you guys think about this book. And I've seen some concerning things on Twitter, so I want to know, am I the only one suffering, or are we all old fans on the same boat? Percy Jackson musical reference, what? And I am going to read a little bit more of this. I am. Woof. That just seemed very bleak right now, but I am. First, I'm gonna wash my face and get ready for bed, and then I'll read more, and then in the morning or whenever I feel like updating you guys, I will. Good night. Hello and welcome to day 2 of the reading blog / book critique, and I am currently at 46% of the book, which is not bad at all for only having read it for one day. I do have something that I want to confess to you guys, and that's the fact that I might have been a bit quick to judge this book. Let me explain. While I'm still on page 165 out of 356, I believe I have a clearer view now of what the whole book is going to be. And I really do believe that that first chapter did not do this book any favors. I'm not going to say I was dramatic about it. I feel like all my reactions were warranted, especially as a longtime Percy Jackson fan who has gone above and beyond and read every single book in the series, and I know a lot of people haven't done that. So I feel like you should give me some credit. I've read every single book on there at least twice. That's right, even the sun and the star, which is kind of the issue. Because that means I know these characters very well. Do I know them inside and out? No, but I feel like I'm pretty well read on the canon. Something that I think Rick Riordan cannot claim anymore in 2025. But the thing is, the start of the book does a very poor job at showing you what the rest of the book is going to be like. And I feel like that's mainly the issue because it feels like Mark Oshiro worked on it way more than Rick Riordan. But that being said, I do like the format of this book. It's Nico and Will going to see Hazel at Camp Jupiter and them interacting with both the campers and the mythics from the start. And then like 70 pages in, we get the real conflict of the book. And that is the fact that the mythics are going missing one each night, which is really exciting. It feels like a murder mystery. What's that game called? Werewolves? Where you close your eyes and you're like, oh, the town is asleep. And then each night the werewolves kill one of the townspeople, and then during the day they have to decide who they want to hang. So it kind of feels like that. I'm actually enjoying the new characters. I think they're the perfect Rick Riordan quirkiness level. I particularly like the Minotaur. I forget his name right now because spoilers, he has been kidnapped. And I also liked the quinoa, the diaper baby, but he's been taken as well. One of my issues with this book so far currently is Hazel. Hazel has never been my favorite character, but I've always liked her, and I feel like she's a little bit off character here, simply because she keeps running to Nico for help. And I feel like Hazel, who has gone through so much in her short lifespan, technically sure it really depends on how you look at it. She has been through so many wars and issues, and she's currently a praetor of New Rome. I feel like she could handle it by herself, or at least without having to run to Nico for help every time an issue comes up. But also what I'm not liking is that they keep changing how the mist works. Either I'm very slow and I have not been able to understand how it works for the past 10 years, or they just keep changing it because currently it works almost like charm speak. It can make people fall asleep. If she could do that, why have Piper at all during the Heroes of Olympus? I am confused. But in terms of the plot, since for 2 nights straight, 2 of the mythics have gone missing, Hazel tries to protect them using the mist, and then a voice warns everyone that Hazel is about to be taken next. They all go into a Roman vault and have a sleepover where they don't actually sleep, but try to resist Hazel being taken. Hazel luckily doesn't get taken, but they do get their next clue, and that is a badge from someone who works at a courthouse in San Francisco, supposedly. And that is where I left off last night. I'm going to do some more reading now, but first I want to discuss with you the glaring issue that is the nicknames that Nico and Will use, because I like my significant annoyance. I thought that was really funny when we first saw that in Trials of Apollo, and I thought it was in character for both of them, especially because Will is good-natured and optimistic and a good person generally, but he doesn't take Nico's shit. But here they use so many nicknames and I think it's literally too much. Annabeth and Percy having one nickname for each other is great. Even having Kelp Face as his backup for Seaweed Brain, I think it's fine. But they're doing too much. Nico calls Will Solace Sunshine quite a bit, and I am starting to convince myself, more like gaslight myself, into believing that he says so ironically. Because I can definitely see Nico calling Will Sunshine ironically, and I actually love that. Kind of in the same vein as Haymitch calling Katniss Sweetheart. Then they have to go and ruin it all by calling him Care Bear. Speaking of couples, there was a very funny moment where Frank and Hazel had a Percy and Annabeth parallel. She laughed and punched him regardless, in the most loving way possible. Try to tell me that that last comment, the most loving way possible, is not a direct result of people saying over the years that Annabeth punching Percy in the stomach in the Titan's Curse was problematic. That is a direct result, 100%. And speaking of parallels to other books, we have yet another parallel to a very, very iconic moment in the Titan's Curse. And oh my god, I am just now realizing that Rick Riordan is doing the same thing that he did with the Wrath of the Triple Goddess. Wrath of the Triple Goddess was born solely to promote season 2 that follows the Sea of Monsters. And I feel like while this was not born solely to promote season 3 based on the Titan's Curse, it's already had many moments that mirror it, so it's definitely meant to bring the Titan's Curse back to the forefront of old fans. So basically they were facing off an enemy and Will started to get really, really bright with like heat waves coming off of him. And now after it's happened, Will and Nico are discussing it. Will looked embarrassed. Don't know, I got angry. Well, it was hot. Will shrugged. I'm the son of the sun god. That's not what I meant. said Nico. Almost died. That is literally a direct copy paste from the scene where Percy and Talia talk about Apollo, the sun god. When they first see him in the Titan Scares, oh my goodness. This guy is just recycling his own work at this point. Do you think that since Nico was there when that first conversation happened, that he remembers and he's like, haha? I don't think so. This just shows something that I've also wanted to talk about. The fact that for some reason, Mark Oshiro and Rick Riordan are trying to make Will, with what little personality they allow him to have, be more like Percy, and I don't understand that at all. They're trying to make him basically a golden retriever who does not pick up social cues, and I don't understand that because he should be so much better at socializing than Nico. That's just facts. He's been around people his whole life. He's had it a whole lot easier and he's much more of a people person. What do you mean Nico keeps having to be like, Will, calm down, we are in public, or Will, that's not an appropriate thing to say in this conversation, in this situation? What do you mean that Nico is the one that has to rein Will in? That makes absolutely no sense. They are, for some reason, making Will dumb. And Will has never been dumb, especially if you take into account that Will has been living at Camp Half-Blood for so long, he can't be making the same mistakes that Percy was making back in book 1. So I don't know why they're making Will so much like Fan and Percy, besides to act the weird meme that Percy is not Nico's type. He is literally becoming Percy. Slowly but surely, he is becoming Fan and Percy. I'm just gonna go read. Some parts of it are actually freezing, son boy. My boyfriend only takes me to their most romantic destination stops. Sassy Solus shows up. Do you know what this duo is sorely missing? A third. And of course, when I mean a third, I mean a Grover. They need someone to be their buffer. Whenever they have a third person around, like Hazel or Frank, they just indulge them in all their cringiness. They need someone to be the straight man there and to look them in the eye and say, guys, you can refer to each other as Will or Nico. You don't have to be like my boyfriend, my boyfriend, my boyfriend. You don't want to be a wife guy. Don't be that guy. Because if you had asked me 5 years ago which couples I would love hanging out the most with out of the Heroes of Olympus, obviously I would have said Percabeth, but right after I would have said Solangelo. And now they are almost at the bottom of my list, besides obviously Leo and Calypso, who are having marital problems. I think I could not stand being around Will and Nico. They are just that annoying. And it makes me sad and mad because I loved them before and I think we could have vibed before, but not anymore. I was about to add that it's weird that they haven't mentioned asking Percy or Annabeth for help, or at least letting them know what's going on. Hazel is under threat of being kidnapped. I would want to know. Imagine one of your best friends, supposed best friends, is about to be kidnapped. You live right next door and they don't tell you anything. Being Percy or Annabeth, I would be so mad. But now they have mentioned them. And of course, it's in the worst way possible. Please leave that boy alone. Can you imagine? I think he would stab me with that pen sword of his. I am currently 60% into this book. I've already read 114 pages, so I just have 40% to go. And things have currently turned very messy because they did find the court, and apparently the Court of the Dead is a court of 3 judges. One of them is Tantalus, I think the other one is Queen Mary, and the other one is an old demigod that supposedly had something to do with Theseus. When they get there, they're judging a poor monster and they're like, well, this sucks. And after that monster disappears, can you guess who shows up? That's right, it's the Minotaur, it's Asterion. And that's when we find out that they're judging monsters who have chosen to change, to become different, to change their fate and choose their own stars. So basically these are monsters that did monstrous things for countless years, but now they've chosen to take back the rings to their own destiny and be good. And obviously old-fashioned monsters don't want that to happen, so they're like, okay, you're dead. And Asterion is found guilty of wanting to change and burst into dust, which obviously is never a good thing. But as someone who has read Percy Jackson before, specifically having to do with the Minotaur, I'm like, that means literally nothing. Especially because they keep talking about the mist, so I don't believe anything I see. But of course, since they're friends now with the Minotaur, they try to help him, and in doing so, they just expose themselves to more danger because now they've seen Hazel and they're like, you are the one that we wanted to judge next. So she is put into trial and found guilty for having fled the underworld. And thus, countless books after her last POV in the Rick Riordan world, Hazel Levesque dies. She's turned into dust. Luckily, Nico and Will manage to get out of there, but obviously they're pretty shaken. And then they meet up with Frank and they all agree that she isn't dead because the last thing that she said was don't believe it, talking about the mist and how they were probably not being shown what was actually happening. Because apparently the bad guys, the Court of the Dead, want to use their deaths to help their cause, whatever that means. And I think at this point, it's time to say enough is enough. Call Percy and Annabeth. I know Hazel might not be dead, but she is in a very dangerous situation. Not to mention that not so long ago, Percy and Annabeth lost a very dear friend to them, and they could do nothing about that. So I can't even begin to imagine how powerless Percy or Annabeth might feel if they're ever told what the hell is going on. I'm sorry, but Frank did not have enough of a reaction there for what's actually happening. Obviously, Hazel isn't dead, and I just started the next chapter, and it's looking like it's gonna be from her POV. And speaking of POVs, book number 1, The Son of the Star, was kind of like a half and half between Nico and Will, and I think that's fair, taking into account that it's a Solangelo book, the Solangelo look, if you will. But I'm more than halfway through the book now, and it's only been Nico, and now it's Hazel. So I'm starting to suspect that we won't be seeing anything from Will, and that kind of sucks. As I was saying earlier, the main problem with this dynamic is that Will and Nico need someone else in the dynamic. They need someone else in order to not be that cringe. And I feel like they're friends that we've already established in all books in the Trials of Apollo and at the beginning of The Sun and the Star would be a great fit for this. Why are literally Will and Nico the only two old campers that can't have blood? I feel like if they had friends and more people to bounce off of, their dynamic would be more similar to what it was in Trials of Apollo. Welcome to day 3 of the reading vlog. I am currently 68% through with this book, so that means that I have a little over 30%. Which means that it's looking like I'm gonna finish it today. Yay. So the last thing that I updated you guys on was the fact that I thought that Hazel was going to get the POV for the next chapter, and I was right. So we got to see where Hazel was, which is trapped in a park with other mythics in the middle of San Francisco, which is not looking good for them because they are trapped in a force field with limited resources like food, water, and most specifically air. So it's not looking good, bruv.
It's not looking good, Bev. It's not looking good.
After that, we cut back to Nico, Will, and Frank, and they are brainstorming solutions for what to do about this huge problem. And in the middle of that tense situation when everyone is grieving Hazel and things are going terribly, Nico is like, Nico wanted to say you're cute when you're annoyed, but he recognized that the situation was not ideal. Is this a callback to Annabeth saying you're cute when you're worried to Percy? Pick your moments. I feel like Will and Nico were so much better as a couple when we didn't know what was going on inside their brains. But not even that would save us from the other line that we got in chapter 66, where Nico is like, right, Nico sucked in a deep breath. I think you all know me. He's explaining how the Cocoa Puffs work to a group of romance. And then Will says, you're my boyfriend, said Will, winking at him. Nico blushed. Why was he blushing? Why did Will always make him blush? Is this even, he's your boyfriend? Will, read the freaking room. It's not the time. Hazel is missing. These two guys, I love them, or I have loved their characters for so long, but I would not want to be stuck in a room with them. I do want to talk about something that's really important in the book, and that is the theme of people looking for a brighter future, for people wanting second chances and wanting to start anew with their lives. Them asking for refuge somewhere and being denied it. Then those people who are seeking, let's just say, asylum for the sake of it, a refuge. Those people are then illegally taken somewhere else and illegally judged. I don't know if that's ringing any bells for anyone else, but if that weren't enough for you to draw a clear parallel between the current state of the United States and this book, here's a direct quote from the book. Fools can be dangerous, especially if they convince others of their importance. Now, I'm not saying that this specific line was written with a specific politician in mind, but I'm saying that it most probably is. Allegedly, allegedly. So all in all, while I was very harsh with the book to start with, I think that the core message of the book is really good. People should be allowed to change. They should be able to have control over their own fates, to choose for themselves. If they have been told their whole lives that they can only do one thing and be one thing, they should be able to say, no, that's not me. I want to do something better. I want to prove myself. I want to make up for all the terrible things that I did. I think that's great. I think that's a great message. And also the message of immigration just as a whole. I agree with it 100%, and I think it's a beautiful thing to say. Just accept people, welcome them with open arms, treat human beings or each other or mythics with respect, basic respect for people. People should have basic human rights. Yes, so right. I love that message. All this anti-tyranny and anti-dictatorship, obviously I'm 100% on board. But while I love those messages, I love that backdrop, I love the new side characters, I actually am really enjoying this new format that we have where each night one of them goes missing and now they have to find them. I think that was a really fun thing that we changed from book one. While we have all of that and I'm enjoying all of that, I do have to say that the writing is just too un-Riordan for me to really fall in love with this book or even really enjoy this book. I think I might go on a reading sprint now to finish the whole book and tell you guys my closing thoughts. But overall, while I am a bit chiller now about the writing and about Will and Nico than I was when I first started reading this book, I do believe that the characters are just still way out of character, specifically whenever they have inner monologue or they keep calling each other boyfriend. I have to agree with a lot of the critiques for book one. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that we're letting Rick Riordan get away with this in 2025, because in my opinion the quality of his writing has greatly declined, especially after he started writing The Trials of Apollo. Every subsequent book after that I feel like has suffered, and I feel like it's because Rick has been stretching himself too thin. The man has been writing at least 1 or 2 book projects a year for a decade, and now he's also tackling writing and producing a TV show. I think it's just insane for him to be doing all of this, and also impossible for him to be doing all of this and taking on all these projects. So while I do believe that he 100% wrote Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and I mostly believe that he also wrote all of Heroes of Olympus and the other trilogies, I am now starting to suspect that either Rick does not really care that much about what he publishes, just the fact that he publishes something, or that we may be dealing with a ghostwriter. I just think that his publishers should really care more about the edits, because how are you letting all these huge plot holes appear in your books? The plot holes aren't really as egregious in this series as they are in the senior year trilogy. They're just insane over there. I'd say here it's more in terms of the characters. Something that I didn't mention before is that right where I left off, Nico had the choice of going to ask Percy and Annabeth for help or going to ask Hades for help, and he chose Hades, where he sacrificed his jacket and he's like, that's half of my personality. And if that doesn't symbolize what is going on with Nico D'Angelo right now, nothing does. And while I agree Nico shouldn't bother maybe Percy and Annabeth, because obviously he's been through a lot and Nico says that himself, I think Percy and Annabeth would at least like to be told what is going on so they can make that choice themselves. That's all I'm saying. I just finished the book and I look like a straight up mess, so I'll make this quick. I kid you not, this was my exact reaction when I flipped the last page and I found out that I had finished the book. It's not a good sign. God, I look terrible. It's so cold. I did make fun of the book a lot at the beginning, and I feel like it still deserves to be made fun of. And after having read all this, I think it's still justified. I might have gone a little bit too far some of the times, but I still feel like this book is not up to par with what Rick Riordan has previously written. Specifically, if we're talking about a character being consistent and in character. But before we actually get to final thoughts, let me actually tell you and share with you what actually happened. I'm gonna use actually so much. So the big baddie showed up, he summoned 2 gods, he wanted to enslave them, he used them to then summon Hades, but then everything blew up in his face. Nico and the gang showed up, and then the mist exploded, which bad because then every mortal could see the monsters or the mythics, or I guess both. But then they free the 2 gods that were enslaved, and they happen to be the gods of trickery, so they shroud everything back under the mist, and now everyone is just hallucinating. Everyone is seeing cats, everyone is seeing dogs, everyone is seeing a Halloween party, everyone was seen in carnival. We get basically the same scene we got of Annabeth and Percy in Tartarus when she gets cursed by Calypso's curse to not see Percy from Nico and Will. Will cannot see Nico, and once again this is a ripoff of a Percabeth moment, and I feel like we've gotten so many, and I feel like they're trying to make them the new Percabeth. Are these callbacks? Are these inspiration? I don't know. I call them ripoffs because I think they should have their own entity. Things get so insane to the point that Nico gets possessed by the Simile woman. What do they call them? Eidolon or something like that? Simile is one of the mythics that's also the same species as the one that possessed Leo all the way back in Mark of Athena. So he gets possessed, they share consciousness for quite a while, and he starts dying. Also at some point Nico says Cocoa Puffs to me, and they all just blend back into his body, and I was like, hooray, finally we're done with this curse that are the Cocoa Puffs. But then they're like, no, they're back. As soon as he gets unpossessed, they're back. So they win the battle because of course they do, and at some point Hecate shows up because of course she does, and she basically fixes everything. After that they go back to Camp Jupiter, and they still don't see Percy and Annabeth. They say their goodbyes, they hug a lot. This Simile woman, who was just like a cloud, gets given a physical body by Hecate, and she keeps saying I love you or beautiful cowman to Asterion, to the Minotaur. And like, is there something going on between them? Because I thought I was getting a vibe from Ariel and Asterion, but I think I might be wrong on both parts. She disappears, and then when Nico and Will go back to camp, it turns out Simile was actually Dionysus's mother, which is very funny. And then in that final chapter, I feel like that's the most in character that we've gotten Dionysus in a while. I did not enjoy the first third of this book. Afterwards, the plot I thought was quite enjoyable. Obviously, it's very low stakes, you know, nothing is gonna happen at this point. The people that thought that Hazel was gonna die, I'm like, dude, have you been paying attention up to this point? These are just gift books that he's giving us. They're just gifts for the fandom. He's not gonna kill a beloved character here. This is not Trials of Apollo, okay? He's not destroying lives here. He's supposedly doing this to keep the fandom happy. Supposedly. And the book just basically ends with Nico and Will being happy while they have chocolate chip cookies. What other ending could you want? So I didn't love the first third of the book, but I thought that the other 2/3 were fine. My favorite third was probably the middle third, then it kind of lost me in the last third. I was very tired reading it, pushing through it because I want to make a video. Not the best reading experience, obviously. I don't know what I'm gonna rate this book, because in terms of plot, I do think it does get better, and I think it's good. And especially that ending, it really felt like Rick Riordan wrote it. The interactions between Nico and Will felt more organic, and Nico felt more Nico than he had felt throughout the rest of the book. Am I broken as a Percy Jackson fan, or is Mark Oshiro not someone who actually gets these characters? Or even if you get them, it's easy to get a character sometimes, but it's hard to convey it through writing. I think that's all I want to say. There's another highlighted portion that I wanted to talk about with you guys in terms of the themes and how they parallel what's going on in the world right now. No one here deserved to be imprisoned simply for choosing how they wanted to live. I thought that was relevant. Take a shot every time I say all in all in this video. I think I've made my thoughts quite clear. This is not the best written Rick Riordan book. I feel like when they're talking to other people about each other, they never mention each other's names. They're always like, my boyfriend. Like, you can just say Will, or you can just say Nico. We know they're your boyfriend. I wanted to end this on a good note. I don't know if that's possible. Some things that I liked about this book. Hazel was in it. It's very interesting to me the fact that Hazel got a perspective. She got several chapters of POV. None of them were with Frank, so I'm like, you want to use Hazel, but you just want her to be like a Nico groupie, because they kept being like, oh Nico, you saved us, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, sure. Hazel did most of the heavy lifting. So who knew that in 2025 I would be a Hazel girly? Someone needs to thank her. Someone needs to make her a fruit basket. Something I also didn't mention in this yet is the fact that Naomi Solis is here, Will's mom. That part was alright. I thought she was cute. I'm just gonna stop here before my brain melts. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment down below if you've read this book and what you thought about it. I think we can have a nice civil discussion down in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already and click that bell button to get a notification every time I post a new video. I post new videos just like this every single week, and usually I'm not as sleep deprived. I've been doing a lot of work, guys, and it's been exhausting. But I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye!